Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a couple subscribers actually comment, which you guys will see here, in the last video I did earlier, who basically wanted me to explain why I prefer the closed grip bench press for both size and strength. So, you guys sit down, strap in, buckle up, and listen while I put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, try to level up my crafting skills. And let's see if we can answer this question. Alright, so why do I prefer the closed grip bench press? Why do I recommend it generally over the wide grip? Well, a couple things to think about. You know, everyone's like, well, heavier weight on the wide grip, so it must make you stronger. More weight equals strength. That's not always true. More weight doesn't always equal more strength, and more weight doesn't always equal more size. In fact, when you take drugs out of the mix, someone who's not on steroids, there is almost no separation between size and strength. You can barely separate the two. Very, very minimally. So it's actually hard to do so. They're very proportionate. In an individual, remember that, I'm not talking across the board, I'm talking about inside you, inside one person or your identical twin. Now, that being said, the wide grip bench press lets you lift more weight because it takes several inches out of the range of motion. That's the biggest reason, and it lets you arch more, which also can take even more out of the range of motion on a wider grip than it does on a closed grip. Meaning, a person who's flat back and closed gripping might be moving the bar 18 inches, and the same person, if they were to arch into a wide grip, might only have to move the weight 4 or 5 inches in some cases, or 6 inches. Is that extra weight really making them bigger and stronger? I would argue not. I would argue that it isn't. Not really, at least. But what it is doing is compromising their joints more. The wider grip itself puts more strain on your shoulder joints, just by default, even with the same amount of weight. And then when you start increasing weight, it puts even more on it. And it puts extra weight on your wrist joints, which in turn can make them sore. Then that's not making you any stronger. If you move a slightly lighter weight through a longer range of motion, have you done more or less work? You've done more work. You've recruited more muscle fibers, actually, if it's a significantly different range of motion. So if you've recruited more muscle fibers and done so in a safer manner with less chance of injury, which one's going to give you more progress, more development? The one that allows you to move the longer range of motion, even if it's at the expense of a slightly lighter weight. And it really isn't that much lighter. And it's because even though you're cutting the range of motion down and doing things like that, the closed grip actually allows you a better anatomical position for power. And I feel like you get better fiber recruitment, you get better chest development, better tricep development. And people try to think of it as a tricep exercise. It really isn't. It doesn't take chest out of it. All it does is change the angles a little bit of the shoulder joint, but you're moving the shoulder joint through a longer range of motion in a safer position. It puts just as much stretch and work on the pectorals as the wide grip does. Now, as far as that stuff goes, you could carry that over to a lot of different exercises. The same philosophy I'm talking about there is the reason why I like shoulder width grip for people doing barbell rows. I don't like them doing them really wide. Same thing when you guys see me having Brittany do lat pull downs. Notice I have her do a fairly narrow grip. Go check yourself on either a barbell row, a Pendlay row, barbell row, lat pull down, and check your grip width and see what shoulder width does versus going out wider. See how much further the range of motion is. You're going to find that the narrower grips on all of those are a longer range of motion. It's actually more work to move the same amount of weight. It's not that it's harder, like people say, oh, you do this to make it harder. You're not making it harder. You're moving the weight further. You're actually just doing more work with the same amount of weight if you use the same weight on there. So in a lot of ways, it is the equivalent of, over the course of a set, maybe doing even more reps. Because again, if you think about reps are obviously the full range of motion to the muscle, the repetitions, but they're also moving a weight through distance. And if you're doing a work set of, say, 8 reps or 10 reps, if you've moved the weight 50% further on each rep, you've done a lot more work. And in a way, as far as the actual weights being moved over distance, you've kind of almost done extra reps. So again, the harder in this case isn't harder in the sense of, oh, you're just putting the muscle in a weird anatomical position that's hard to lift, like some of these exercises people talk about. What you've done is actually just increase the amount of work you're doing. in terms of the actual tonnage moved over distance. And on top of that, a lot of these movements with the narrower grips that do that seem to put a safer position on a lot of your joints, like your shoulder joints and stuff. So again, people tend to do better on these narrower grip pulling movements, on these narrower grip pressing who have shoulder injuries in the past. So if it does better for people who had shoulder injuries in the past, it might be a good idea to train that way most of the year, if not year-round, if you want to actually avoid developing shoulder injuries. Think about it as preventive maintenance. And what's going to make you bigger and stronger faster? Hurting your shoulders or not hurting your shoulders? Not getting hurt. Being consistent in the gym. Consistency is actually the #1 key to success as far as gaining muscle or strength. That is more important than just about any other factor as far as your programming goes. People who have lower injury rates are more consistent over the years. If you're more consistent over the years, you're going to gain more muscle. It's really simple mathematics. So if you're training in a manner that is less likely to damage your shoulder joints, are you more likely to gain more muscle over time? Yes, statistically you are. Makes it better. But as far as the range of motion thing goes, think about it on other exercises. I apply the same logic to a lot of exercises. Guys will ask me, do you think high bar squat is superior to low bar squat for overall size and strength development? And I say, yes, it is, because you move the weight about 5% further. I'm a big fan of that. It's the reason I like the conventional deadlift over the sumo deadlift. The sumo deadlift cuts about 14 to 15% of the range of motion out. You're not moving the weight as far. That's why a lot of guys use it. Sumo deadlift is in a way very similar to using a big arch and a wider grip on a bench press. And I understand it's upper body versus lower there, but the idea is the same. You're changing your angles and your stance and your width on everything so that you can trim the range of motion down. And it actually changes which muscles get worked a little bit as primary movers and things. So it changes the biomechanics also. So it's a very similar concept. But which one's going to make you bigger and stronger faster? Not doing a really big arch with a really wide grip. You're going to put on more muscle doing the opposite of that. So you could apply this to many different exercises, and I do, and I generally recommend those things. And I really think that's the way to go. So there's a whole host of reasons why I think the closed grip bench press is superior. And it comes down to, again, being able to do more work per set, total workload, total tonnage, because of the extra range of motion. Because you'll see a lot of guys will count tonnage as number of reps done times total weight done. But they're not factoring in that people's rep lengths differ. That's why some guys seem like, who have longer limbs and stuff, sometimes can't lift as much weight as a guy who's shorter or with shorter limbs, but they end up getting just as much development with a lighter weight. Why is that? Because they're having to move the weight a further distance. They're actually having to do more work on every rep. And it's work that stimulates metabolic fatigue. It's work that requires muscle fibers to be recruited. It's work that makes you bigger and stronger. Your actual workload. So another factor to think about with all of that. So a lot of guys complain about their long limbs, but at the end of the day, even though they might lift less weight because of it, they don't always suffer development problems because of it. And then again, the other factor is, like I said before, the lower chances of shoulder injuries. I mean, that is invaluable by itself. If nothing else, just any form of exercise, any variation of an exercise that offers lower injury rates, even if they offered the same amount of development, would be superior every time. That's just basic common sense, basic logic. If you've got the same gains from one exercise versus another variation, but one of them injures you less often, only an idiot would knowingly do the one that injures him more often. Even if his goals were only gains, because injuries prevent gains. Besides the fact that they hurt and can mess your life up and be expensive, they also limit your progress. So, it's not a statement that I make lightly when I say that the closed grip bench press is superior to the standard bench press for overall development and strength. But do some people still need to do the wide grip bench press? Yeah, people who get tested on it in any sort of competitive environment. So if that's you, you're still going to have to do it. If you power lift, you are going to have to switch over when you compete to a wider grip if you want to win. If you want to get the best total possible, because you don't want to lose 10 or 20 pounds off of your total because your bench is down a little bit, yeah, you're going to have to do that. If you're competing in the NFL combine test, trying to get drafted from university and they test you on that bench press test, you're going to have to use a wide grip when you do the test. You're going to have to prepare for it because that could be $1 million difference for you. But for everyone else, the only reason they're gripping wide is for their ego, so they can lift more weights for the guys watching. But is it really better? No, I don't think so. But you know what, guys? At the end of the day, that's just my opinion on it. That's my logic on it. You can kind of take it or leave it. You know, it is what it is. It's just my opinion, ultimately, my line of thinking. You're free to think however differently you want and disagree if you like. That's okay. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.